to a hemisphere. Haver sine means half sine. It's a
Well,
center of a plane to a hemisphere. That's what the equation is. It's for distance.
have you ever seen that magic symbol, Brian, where you can put a circle inside a triangle and then the triangle inside the square? Or I don't know, I might have got the order wrong there, but you can put, say if you had a large triangle, you could put a circle inside that and circumnavigate it. You could do the same in a square. If the dimension of the original shape is big enough, you can put a circle in any of these shapes. So circumnavigation doesn't mean circle in the larger sense. Like you could do a circle, but not be necessarily in a circle.
It still means the continents have to be laid out in a way that you can sail around them, which requires something like an AE map.
Right. That's why we got to center the AE map at the equator, because that's how the world was laid out from the equatorial plane.
Okay, so what does that put at the rim then?
It puts a 24-hour sun around Antarctica.
Yeah, but forget about the sun. What land? What land?
And the tropic cancer at the top.
I'll look it up myself.
I must have misunderstood his question. Sorry, Jim.
It's important though to grasp
if you center it at the equator, what land ends up as a rim?
Nothing. Just beyond the equator. I put in my model. I put just another barrier. To me, that would explain that Navy video saying that that they were hunkering down for the 9 sunless months of the treacherous Antarctic winter, because maybe they did go beyond Antarctica and to the actual border, or whatever's contained in the oceans, if the world is planar, you know.
Right. Well, centered on the equator, it looks like this. So how would that get you a 24-hour sun in Antarctica?
What? I'll post my model because I'm not seeing yours, but I'll look for yours too. But
no, I'm in the right place. Oh no, I've just posted it. I posted it in the live stream text.
I can see it, James.
Yep, I'm going there. Hold on, and I'll post my model to show you what I'm talking about.
You don't need a model, guys.
Yeah, it's just like I think philosophically, like that there is something there. There's a residue that's developed, like from my own personal philosophy as through this whole thing. If I'm not hot micing here, is that like that remains, you know, like, and it is indifference to like the concept of like the spacefaring folks that reside here also, that think that they can go to other planets and start over. I think it is essentially that you know, flat Earth can actually be more about here, and I think that's possibly a philosophical thing that's inextricable from what is even physical reality, right? Even if there are other planets, I still think philosophically there remains to be resolute importance in the conceptual framework of here right now. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's going to continue that way too. It will always remain that way. So that there are parts of this that even if you could like remove like the scientific possibility for this would be for the Globers, that's still like the conceptual framework for flat Earth remains. And to many degrees, it is true to you as a local being, you know, even if the stellar cosmos to you is a grand and ever expanding. That's all I want to say. Thanks. Appreciate the time.
Even if you debunk it, you'll still have a conceptual framework. So, what's your point? You just spake the obvious. Even as fallacious, it's still a framework. Not saying that it is.
Some people. Some people feel that the whole exercise is to stifle exploration. So once you have a replacement model, say if you had the dome over the top and a circle with an ice wall around it, and then people claim that, how can they claim that without knowing if it's even real? It's insane.
Well, we have something that's real, and then we have a conceptual framework of the real, which is an idea, an attempt to address the real and put it into a palatable form of which you can grasp, imagining yourself now as not able to do so, or realizing yourself as dissociated from the get-go or from some point. Thus, you need a framework of concepts. So
But
even if it's fallacious, it's still a conceptual framework.
Yeah. But
Yes.
say if the dome model gets claimed, but just hypothetically, what if we live in the center of a volcano?
Yeah, that would be a new
You know what I
conceptual
mean?
framework.
Yeah. Just
Yes.
to me, it's like it's like people go, oh, the truther or the realist isn't really interested in reality. And then it's like, yeah, like what's really happening here? Is it, do we just want a replacement model, or do we really want to get to the bottom of it? Because if the Earth isn't a globe, like since I've been in this, there was a false dichotomy. It was like you had vanilla and chocolate, globe and flat, or concave, right? Yeah, they were the three. But which one's real? What is true, right? And that's been the whole investigation. And here we are 10 years later, still not at a definitive point. The ballers think the whole thing's been, a wasted exercise, and that flat Earth has always been wrong and always will be wrong. But that's why I still consider Gem a voice in it, because it's like, well, anyway.
And we'll be here 3,000 years later as well if we keep adhering to.
I'm not.
Okay. So now you've got rid of a model that doesn't make sense. Would you be interested in looking at a model that does make sense?
Well, all these models. What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, I don't care about models. What I care about is, what is the Earth?
I mean, a set of ideas that make sense then. Forget the word model.
It shouldn't be so hard to get to the bottom of this.
Okay, so really, you're trying to slag off flat earthers by saying this is definitely wrong, stupid, but you haven't got anything to replace it with?
You gotta
I don't need anything to replace. Listen, if the last thing I'll say is, if there's an ice wall,
I'm quite good at it sometimes.
That's all right. Okay, if there's a dome there, you should be able to verify that and provide, as we like to say in our circles, proofsies, evidence.
Hard to get up there.
Demonstration of the dome. No. Some people say it's made out of glass and blue obsidian rock.
But we don't have to listen to all of those people.
Right. Well, what do you listen to? Is it who's saying it? Like, do you discount it because it's me, or do you consider it because it's Eric Dubay?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who says it, does it? What you want to look at is the evidence for it, and there isn't any.
Right.
Flat earthers don't need a model.
Well, they do.
If there isn't any evidence, if there isn't any evidence for it, you don't have any reason to believe it exists.
I agree. That's music to my ears. That's why I could never claim it. No one could ever show me the dome.
You did claim it, bro, for
no,
7
I never
to 8
claimed
years.
it.
For 7 to 8 to 9
never
years,
claimed
if
it.
we're really counting.
It's 10 years. This 2015, it's 10 years.
Yeah, so maybe you've claimed it for 10 years, counting this last year, because you claimed it a bit still.
I didn't. I asked Gems
We've got all the recordings. I'm your good friend. I've got my recordings in my mind.
You've got not one. Never claimed it.
I've got
And I
at
hassled down
least
Waterman.
1,000 recordings of you preaching the Earth is
just
flat in my
You
my
gotta-
mind.
You gotta have a dome
it-
to hold. You gotta have a dome to hold your brain in a container.
It baffles
Your
me,
brain
man.
has to be contained in some kind of a dome. Your head is a dome.
It baffles me that it baffles me the Globe says like, you know, they use like all this stuff to fix their model. Sure, you got a good model, okay, and you use aberration, delayed light, declination, and refraction, all this stuff, but hold us to just pure geometry. Like we can't have any of that. We can't have any explanations. We have no evidence. It's just not honest, man, in my opinion, to just hold us to such scrutiny that you don't even fall under in your own category. Like you got all this stuff to make a great model. Sure, you got a great model. Okay, we're working on ours. Okay, we got a fair model. Okay, and hopefully it'll get better and stuff. But just to pin us down to no explanation, that's bullshit, man.
Okay, show me
no
what.
evidence. You say no
All right.
evidence at all. That's not honest,
Yeah.
bro.
Right, what's the evidence for a dome then?
Gempanda in the room.
Rainbow.
A
Original.
rainbow is evidence for a dome. Come on.
There's an apparent dome. Jim, walk outside, bro.
That would
You
be
think that-
begging. That would be.
Hold on.
that-
Do you think
that
the
would be
globe
very
is that
obvious.
small, though?
That would be very obviously begging the question, wouldn't it?
If you walk outside, you're going to see clouds setting in the distance to the horizon. Do you think that's Earth curve doing that? Or do
So
we just
let's
see the dome
let's
around?
return to the evidence for the dome. Do you have any? No.
Okay, when I walk outside, I feel like I'm looking at a sphere. Just in my local region. Is the Earth that small, or is that just how I see, Jim?
Are your personal feelings evidence?
Why won't you answer one question, bro?
Because because you aren't answering. My question was, what is your evidence for a dome? Your answer to that is to ask me. Your answer to that has been to your answer to that has been to ask me questions and talk over me.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah, let's not have interruptions, Brian. Come on, Len. We gotta go one at a
my
time.
answer was rainbow. He's lying right through his
No, he said
teeth. My answer
rainbows.
was rainbow, Jim.
He said rainbows.
Is that
Robert,
really evidence,
how is
though?
that
It's
evidence
kinda-
for a dome? How do you connect a rainbow to a dome?
You're going to keep asking me questions and still not answer my first question
But we're-
and tell me that I didn't answer your question, whether you like the answer
Okay,
or
what
not.
was your
and
first
don't say
question?
that I didn't answer it.
What was your first question?
I said when the clouds set.
Right,
you walk outside and it looks like you have a sphere around you. Is that what is that? Is that
okay?
Is that a little mini globe around you?
Right, my question was, what is your evidence for a dome? You said rainbow, and you think that's it, the end of story. How do you connect the rainbow to the dome? We're still on my question. You can't, can you? It's just
Well,
you gotta have a
I mean, one of the. I'm not really making. I'm not
do you
really
know?
making. Well, hold on.
How
I'm
do you
not
know
really
that-
making the argument. Hold on. I'm not really making it at the moment, but I will say one way that people say is that you have to have a mirror to create a rainbow. So you can't create a rainbow indoors without a mirror. So if they happen outdoors, it implies that there's at least a mirror, which implies some sort of a reflection, which could imply a physical surface.
But my answer was kind of in my question also, like when I'm following up with the rainbow.
Hold on, Brian.
like,
I
it
just
doesn't
made
have
a
to be
point, dude. I just made a point. Why?
sorry.
I mean, can we like at least address that before it just flies off? He's asking about the rainbow, and you're just trying to fly off onto a whirlwind of something else.
Well,
I don't know why. You're the one who said it. Why don't you want to actually back it up now?
I don't think a mirror is.
Yeah, it was a little diversion, but not intentionally.
I don't think a mirror is necessarily required to make a rainbow. I think that's just something people have derived from photos of them and the fact that usually some artificial light source, which is what's usually available inside, involves some sort of reflector, right? Because that's how lights are made.
Doesn't have to be a mirror, but it does have to be a reflector.
I think if all the examples you have use a reflector, I don't think that necessarily means one is required. And I don't think there's anything in physics that tells us that.
What I was getting at, though, is that, and the rainbow's the answer, but it doesn't have to be a physical dome, was what I was getting at, you know. I was kind of expanding on my answer with my question because I wanted to hear your answer to see which way to go with it. And that's why I got upset when you said that I didn't answer, man. And I'm sorry for flipping out, but man, it's like,
All right.
dude, I literally am trying to answer you, bro. But so it doesn't have to be a physical dome. When we walk outside, it looks like a sphere in my local little region, and we know that the Earth's not that small, just my local little area, but it looks like a dome,
But can you see how the process that you're engaging in now is you've started with your conclusion and now you're trying to invent things that can make your conclusion true. You aren't looking at reality. You are probably not. You aren't looking at reality and saying, here's some things in reality. What can I derive from them? You're starting with your story. You're starting with your story of a flat Earth, and then going, what can I find in reality to make this seem true? And I think
I started by answering your question, Jim. I started by trying to answer you honestly, and you won't do the same for me.
Well, I don't think you did. I don't think you did answer me honestly, even slightly. I think your answer was. I think your answer was profoundly dishonest.
He's simply saying that he's observing you or assuming you are biased in your assumption, meaning that you're leaning towards a conceptual framework and from that doing the make it make sense.
You take an awful lot of time to say nothing, dude.
Yeah, dude, this 5 last minutes was just summarized in what I just said. If you can't figure that out, it's the reason why you fight.
Are y'all like, are you taking my response and then just throwing it back at me like double? Like, my point is, we're talking about the sphere and whether it's real or apparent, and you're just acting like you're just flying off backwards like I'm making all these assumptions. I can't get you to acknowledge or answer one question, man. So do we see apparent sphere when we walk outside in our local region?
You've been telling me
that's important, man. That's evidence.
You guys have been telling me something that telling me something is true that we now know is completely false for 10 years. I'm not going to talk about any.
Answer one question, Jim, bro.
I'm not going to. I'm not. Can I finish? I'm not going to talk about anything else for at least 6 months. Not a single thing. Every time I interact with one of you guys, which won't be very often, I'm going to bring this up, and I'm not going to allow you to talk about anything else. Not with me, at least.
All right. Well, just on the point, real quick, of moderation. Hold on, Don. Hold on. Just on a point of moderation, Brian, you got to please stop interrupting, dude. I don't want to be muting and unmuting. Just got to wait till people are finished, bro, one at a time, and then obviously like try to keep it concise enough too. Oh, he just split. Yeah, I had to mute him. It's out of control. I just temporarily muted him, but I was about to unmute him. But I mean, he just makes it so out of control with the interruptions. But
well, the point is, why doesn't it bother you guys that you don't have an explanation for this? That's
well, I mean,
the point.
Jem, like if Brian were in Antarctica, okay.
In terms of the sun, though, Jem, I've personally never claimed that there was not a 24-hour sun there. So I don't have anything to like apologize for or say I was wrong for. I definitely did talk about it, though, about the phenomenon, about the lack of the minimal evidence, about the different evidences that were claimed, about, and all of the factors of how sort of limited the information was of the sky in Antarctica for all these years. I mean, we were talking earlier, the first footage that we're even aware of in all of humanity of the 24-hour sun in Antarctica didn't pop up until around 2014 and 15 when flat Earth started becoming popular. So back in the 2000s, 90s, 80s, 70s, you couldn't find any footage of it. So, it's pretty...
Right, but all of those times, there was no internet for you to find it anyway, was there? So it wasn't really relevant.
Well, there could have been in 2005.
I can't remember. What was the point you made before that? I forgot what you said. I did have something to say, but I can't remember what you said before that. Oh, yeah, I know. I don't think any of you get to disown it, Gio. I think even I think you probably have made a claim to it at some time. You say you haven't. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to be able to find one now if you have, right? But I don't think, I've not heard any flat earther in the 10 years that I've been following this object to this in any significant way. None of you have said, no, that's wrong. I wish people weren't using, using that map. Well, some people have said, I wish you weren't using that map, but that's because they didn't want any map to be used, not that particular one. And so I don't think none of you have been saying this is wrong. We shouldn't be talking about this. Lots of you have used it in arguments. Oh, the United Nations even use it, and they're hiding in plain sight, and this sort of thing. It's on mugs, it's on T-shirts, it's on posters behind people when they're live streaming. It's on their thumbnails. There's videos explaining how the sun and moon work on it. I mean, none of you can disown it. You really can't, unless you can show me where you were specifically saying it's bollocks. I don't think any of you can step away from it.
But the UN map stuff, that's kind of just like, that's just granted that there's a rabbit hole, right? With all that stuff, just given conspiracy in general. Okay. So there's because it's just because of power, therefore there are conspiracy. But
people
in any event, so like, that's never been like a grade A defense for it. If anything, it's just like it's a piece of the furniture here. That's all I'm saying.
Right. It's a thing that people have said in support of the flat Earth idea. They've said, look, even the UN are using it. The UN use a flat Earth map, is what people say.
But I mean, even if you were,
like, some say they do that, like, truth in plain sight kind of thing. If they're claiming they think the AE map is true or close to truth in plain sight. There's another way to see it, that AE map is more of like an actual psyop of sorts, like a social engineering, like a partially false model that has been pushed kind of in replacement. Like in replacement for the sphere with heliocentrism, they kind of, flatten it out. It's distorted, in the southern regions especially, and then put a little heliocentric ball sun above it, and then make that circle around. You got your little ball sun. It's like heliocentrism, kind of flat Earth style.
Well, I don't know who is responsible for that psyop, but if anybody was, it was a flat Earther, wasn't it?
Well, I mean,
but I mean, Gio, even if you were gonna disown the AE map, which other flat Earth map supports a 24-hour sun?
Right, there isn't one.
Well, let me just say real quick though, like the Gleason map itself, which is pretty much what the AE projection, like it's quite similar to the Gleason, and that one was like 1892 is claimed, and on that map in the lower right-hand corner it says, it's like perpetual darkness beyond 80 degrees. Well, these guys were just at 80 degrees, and it's anything but perpetual darkness. So I mean, that Gleason's map right there just claims it. And I was looking, I mean, this is kind of what's unfolding now, is like looking into like who actually claimed it, who was just maybe parroting it or on 50-50 on it, and then who was saying that that there likely is one, and so on. So there's like a whole spectrum of that. But also we were looking at William Carpenter, and he did 100 proofs the Earth is not a globe, which Eric Dubay then turned it into 200 proofs or whatever, but that was the original 100 proofs. And I was just reading one of them today. I think it was like number 37 or 36 of his, and it was basically describing, it didn't specifically say like no 24-hour sun in Antarctica, but it was describing the basically the midnight sun in the north, and then claiming how it should be mirrored in the south, and it isn't, basically. But we're discussing how it is, and how these guys going even further validated that. So I'm just saying, it was even in William Carpenter in the 100 proofs. It was in Robotham, it was in Gleason, but it was not in all of them. Like Lady Blunt, like she said there was a 24-hour sun. So it's interesting to look back at that history, because anyone in 2015 that was starting to look into flat Earth, like that was the literature that they were going to find, these writings from the 1800s.
But Lady Blount's position was just one of ambiguity. She just said the Earth's flat, and yes, there's a 24-hour sun. She held the two incoherent ideas, in her mind at the same time, and never bothered to try and find a resolution. Her position was, well, we know that this is a fact because people have reported it as a fact. I mean, I don't know why she traded in her zeticism at that point, but apparently she did, from what I've read, and she just seemed to hold the two incompatible ideas as both being true. I don't know how.
She was seduced by the dark powers of zeticism, you're saying?
No, I think she just realized that she couldn't account for it, so she just didn't bother to try. And she couldn't argue with it because, I don't know, whoever, Shackleton, whoever was coming back and saying, with his films in Antarctica and what have you, and it became undeniable, I guess.
It should really bother you that there is no flat Earth model that supports a 24-hour sun, but it doesn't seem to for some strange reason. Okay, which flat Earth model does a 24-hour sun work on? There isn't one.
They're still working
Which
it out.
globe
dude.
model does relativity work on?
Yeah, you can go ahead and shift the burden of proof. That doesn't help you though.
It does.
Well, I'm just
because
applying
then
the
we can
same
go back
logic.
to the topic, which was they're both conceptual frameworks, and now you are
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about
there's Mr.
ideas.
Conceptual
And you're
Framework.
The
fighting.
24-hour sun is a conceptual framework? Are you kidding me?
That's
Right.
not
Why-
what I said. That's you making sense out of your conceptual framework by saying, I have this idea. Now I go out in nature. I call the color red red. Look, there is red. Red exists. Now it's real.
Dude, it's
It's
not
nothing
an
like
idea.
that.
People went to the
Now it's
South
red.
Pole and saw the 24-hour sun. It was not an idea. It's something that actually happened.
Right. It's not a concept.
Okay, so I'm not going to argue with you whether the sun exists.
And what you're also going to do is not provide an explanation for the 24-hour sun on a flat Earth.
Do you want an explanation or an explanation?
An explanation would be nice.
Welcome to the false dichotomy.
So we got to ask a question then. Why do you want an explanation?
No, you don't have to ask the question. You just have to answer it.
Okay, so you place yourself then in the position of not knowing.
It's okay. We know you can't answer it. You can try all this philosophical waffle for as long as you want. But at the end of it, you still won't have an answer to the question.
That's the problem, my friend, is that the conceptual framework that you are creating...
There's no
and
conceptual framework. They saw the sun in the sky. That's not a conceptual framework. It's reality.
Yes, but putting it in accord with your ideas as to describe what's going on is a conceptual framework. Thus, you do the thing that you dislike, which is creating the philosophical wobble.
I'm not doing that. I'm pointing out that when you do that, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, am I now? I think you're being presumptuous, imagining me on some kind of side here.
I mean, the fact that you have to do all these mental gymnastics just proves that you can't answer the question.
Right.
No.
Heliocentrism doesn't...
Can you answer the question then? Just give one straight answer to the question. Are you able to?
This is all tactical.
Of course you're not.
This is tactics and Space Pope. I'll call you both out.
We know you're not beginning.
How are these tactics, Merle?
You aren't able to.
It's a false dichotomy.
How is this a tactic, Merle? We have video footage of the 24-hour sun. How is this a tactic?
So 24-hour sun proves globe, does it?
I'll tell you two basic models. I'll tell you three.
Impossible.
Hold on, I'll tell you three basic models that could work just as general layouts. Like I'm not gonna be at my mic for super long, so I can't get into a long thing on it now. But if you basically have, like, you have the globe is one of them, which I agree the globe does explain a 24-hour sun in the Antarctica pretty well. I mean, there's I think other things about the globe model, but nonetheless, that's fine. And then the next one is a planar AE map, AE type map. But what you would have to have is a sky that basically moves with you, like the celestial sphere, like on Walter Bisland's type model. When you have that celestial sphere and it kind of tilts when it goes to the north, like as Polaris gets higher in your sky, that axis tilts. That rotation, when you're at the equator, you get the 50-50. You see half of each rotation with the straight line because the sphere is like leveled out, and then that celestial sphere starts to arc up in terms of the southern rotation as you get further and further to the south, right, and then that ends up being a 24-hour sun. However, for that to work, hold on, let me just finish. I'm just explaining the three general things. However, for that to work, just like in Walter Bisland's, that celestial sphere has to move with you. So like you would have like infinite 24-hour suns on the outer rim, depending on where you're at, because it would be dependent on your position. Now, I'm not making the assertion. I'm just telling you that's one way it could work, is if that celestial sphere moves with you. And then the third way, real quick, third way is a 2-pole planar Earth model that actually has 2 poles.
Okay, well, I don't see how the second one there you described would work. If the celestial sphere or semisphere moves with you, I don't see how that will create these multiple 24-hour suns. And if it's doing it, as you say, in multiple places, then there should be other locations on Earth where we would experience this.
So are you using your imaginations now when you speak of what you're seeing and not?
So that doesn't seem to work. So,
well, it would be like these images I'm posting, just to give the idea. I'm not trying to assert it as a fact. You were asking how this can work. So I'm just saying, like that one I just posted, the first image, it's in the live stream one text, is at like 53 degrees at Punta Arenas. So that's what they would have seen, the southeast, southwest sun, etc. And then going all the way to 80 degrees is the second one, like essentially Union Glacier, which shows the 24-hour sun there. So I'm not asserting it. I'm just saying how it could work in theory is if this celestial sphere, just like on Bisland's model, you can change the longitude, so you can make the little hemisphere there anywhere around the outside. You can move it. So I'm just saying, if that moved with you, you would always see a 24-hour sun in any position in the south if it's laid out like. I mean, again, this is with the kind of AE type of layout that would still maintain it, but this thing has to move with you. And I agree, that's a whole thing to get down to the dynamics of how that would be working. But geometrically, it would fit, though.
Your second explanation also doesn't work, because if we did have 2 poles, I mean, they took photographs of the sunspots when they were there, and they found that they matched the actual sun. So we're not looking at 2 separate or 2 different suns. We're looking at the same sun.
I mean, the Walter Bisland's model and shows you it's not explaining where things are. It's only saying it summarizes or encapsulates what an individual in one location in one time sees. So when it shows the sun on their rim of that little hemidome, it's not saying where it is or the stars or any other context. That's the bit that you need to have to make it a proper model. Where is the sun? Where is it? Where can you put a luminary such that everybody looking in radically different directions can see the same thing? Where is it? Then when you have that, then you have a model that is analogous to the globe Earth model, where they say the sun is at a certain position, at a certain distance. Does it correlate to all the observations of all the individuals simultaneously? And it does. That's the point when another model becomes as robust as the globe perspective.
And that's my big problem with this, Geo, is because I think that if you're going to sign up for this, you're giving up on objective reality. You're saying we don't all experience the same one. There's a different reality going on for each one of us.
No, it would basically be this.
We can't say where the sun is, because it's in one place for you, it's in somewhere else for someone else, and someone else somewhere else for someone else,
And that's
also it would be like this. It would be like the sky, whatever it is, the crystalline, whatever, super fluid. But it would be that, like, any position on Earth that you can observe from, like if you put a camera down and it looks up at the sky, the camera, that exact latitude and longitude, that position, and then of course the season and all that, you would get an observational point. If you're a human being and you're standing here, wherever you're standing, you would get one. However, it has to be like an observational thing. Like if it's just a rock, the rock can't really observe anything. Like I said, again, I'm not asserting this as being the case. I'm just saying people were asking the different ways. And I'm saying, like, a 2-pole planar model that just has 2 poles with 2 actual rotations is one whole way. And then the other way, if one wants to maintain an AE map, I mean, you could do multiple suns, or you could do like 4 outer rotation or 6 outer rotations or something. That's a whole different thing. But I'm just referring to this one, which, the way Walter Bisland's with that, it's not. I mean, he just pulled that data from Stellarium. It's not really. I mean, it's just that he put the little model together. But it's just data pulled from Stellarium. Ultimately, is the reason I'm using it for. And it's just when you have that celestial sphere, you would. But the thing is, yes, that one way is that if that moved with you, but like it's not really different for everyone. It's that you would only get it from your position, like your position on the Earth, like your actual longitude.
Well, then that returns you to Paz's question. Then, in that case, where is the sun?
Yeah, and then the GPs and shadows. Yeah, I know there'd be a lot further to have to hash out with that because you would think there'd be different GPs for different people, and then how do the GPs track on the ground? However, if you're going to get a GP, the dude who's taking the GP measurement is all the way in another bubble. He's all the way in some other area taking that GP thing, and then you're seeing, and this gets back to like the apparent sun. Is the sun like, and then even on a spiritual level, is it like, do we all have our own sun? Again, I'm not putting these things as forth. I'm just, they're as ideas right now. So
right, but
doesn't the duopole mean Pac-Man? Like,
don't you think fundamentally? Sorry, Trouble. I'll just get this out. But fundamentally, as a starting point, we have to agree that it's an objective reality. That there is an objective reality that we're well. We don't have to, but if we're not going to, there's no argument. Then, if we're not going to, then there's no argument, is there?
No, I hear you. I hear you because
you've got your reality. I've got my reality. That never the twain shall meet. But I don't think
well, you might have fiction.
Well, what I'm saying could, yeah, I hear what you're saying because it could even lead towards some kind of like even like a solipsistic kind of subjective virtual reality simulation, some kind of yeah. So I hear you. I'm happy to agree that we live in an objective reality. Yeah.
Right, and I think that then that kind of rules this out. Really, I get that you're talking about a sort of a point of view, a perspective here, but like as Pazza said, you've got to put objects somewhere, and I don't know where you're going to put them. And I think that also applies
intelligent.
I think that also. I think that, well, all right, you're a really, really clever philosopher, dude. Okay, and I think also if you're trying to, with two poles, where's your second pole? Where is the actual physical location of that on Earth?
Well, I mean, not just that, but like when they went there, they took photographs of the sunspots, and they determined that they were looking at the same sun, not a different one. So if you're going to claim that there's more than one sun, how does that work in your model?
Well, I did not claim there's more than one sun. Hey, Jem, have you seen this one? This kind of, I think this is like the Lambert paraconical. Well, there's a Lambert and there's also a paraconical, but have you seen these? So this one, I mean, again, I'm not asserting this is the absolute fact. Just you're asking about ideas of how it could work. Now, I know that this changes the layout of the continents, and then you get, what is Sydney to Santiago at this point? There's all kinds of questions. So I understand that with the layout of the land. However, it retains Antarctica as a continent, and it has two poles, and it has, you would have a 24-hour sun circling around that northern one in the northern time. You'd have the southern and the southern, etc. But then, like when it's at the equator, like what do you get, a Pac-Man or something, at the equinox? So yeah, I'm not saying that's like but I'm just giving it's just the idea of a two-pole model that would actually have two poles. So if Jaron and Witsit were down in Antarctica, yeah, that sun's circling around them, kind of thing. So in that model. So
but how could it then also be visible in other parts of the world at the same time? Like for instance, if it's circling around them in Antarctica, let's say it's south of them in Antarctica, and at the same time it's lighting up Canada.
Coffee cup caustic. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I'm not.
I mean, it's visible in the sky in Canada, let's say.
Well, that would be nighttime, though, I guess, right? So, like, if the sun,
not if the sun's visible. It's some of the time, some of that 24-hour period in Canada, the sun would have been high in the sky, right?
Well, like if the sun would be circling around Antarctica, let's say right now, like when they're there or whatever, the sun is at the Tropic of Capricorn. If you're going around Antarctica, when it's in the south on that map, it would just be nighttime for Canada. And then as it comes up near that Tropic of Capricorn, Canada would get that very low, arcing winter, sun where it's just very low. And that's why it's cold. Like what you get in northern Canada, the sun rises really low and then just, I mean, not super low, but, so that would be when it comes up over like South America or whatever, you would get that kind of distant winter sun in Canada. And then when it's in the, south of, or whatever, of Antarctica, it would just be nighttime for Canada, I guess would be the idea there.
I don't think that's going to add up when we start playing around with it in terms of where it's daylight and where it's nighttime. But I guess you could play with it, but I doubt it. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, you know
And the
how
coffee cup caustic
'cause it ends up-
requires.
Hold on, real quick. I'm not even. Well, I was just joking with that caustic effect, but real quick, just how this little layout too of like an electric field matches that. Like that little electric field, you get two 24-hour suns, you get two rotating stars, you get the equator at the center, and then the right image there shows a ferrocell. So I mean, this is the way magnetic fields function on a small scale. So it does match that as well.
Okay, but where are these locations on Earth?
North
Where
Pole,
are
North Pole, and South Pole.
I mean, the
That's
thing
it.
is that the
Pac-Man. But
is
that's
it the
Pac-Man, because on the celestial equator is all the planets and the sun and the moon. So now you've got them Pac-Manning from one side of the Earth to
Right.
the other.
Well,
I think what
I
we're gonna...
showed this, sorry, I know I'm
No, it's
getting
fine.
in.
Go on, sure.
Well, dude, there's this video. Actually, Brian made it, and it's a video. I guess you'll have to kind of play it. It's not like a GIF thing. You'll have to just click it and play. But basically, at the beginning of it, it shows like he has like a notebook with parallel lines and all these little stars. Somebody took a pen and drew little stars. And then he took like a glass dome and placed it over it. So basically, it's all just parallel lines of stars, parallel lines. And once he places that like glass dome over it, it basically makes the pattern of the southern rotation and the northern rotation and the center at the equator. So it's just kind
No,
of
it
cool.
doesn't. It has them all squashed. We see them in perfect round circles. That has them like ovals and all squashed. Same as the
I
picture
think-
you just posted.
And
I think
why
what I was
would...
going to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Paz.
So I've got to go. I think the important thing about the looking at things through the Bislin model, where you're looking at one individual's directional observation of the sun, and that's all it really gives you. Where that little person on the ground is looking, where they at any given time see the sun. This alludes back to. This is basically just a real-time configurable equivalency to Joss Lay's original videos, where he put on YouTube, which is Requiem the Sun, where at a given time, like solstice, he literally drew hundreds of arrows at dawn or dusk as the direction where everyone looked in a video simultaneously. And when you see that and you see the simultaneous observations, clearly there's a massive problem with it being on a flat surface. I encourage people to go and look at those videos, because if you're gonna make any attempt to find some sort of geometry or some sort of physical nature of what's above you that allows you to look at the Bislin model and say, okay, this is the foundation of some understanding, you have to consider what's happening to everybody all the time at the same time, not just looking at one person and saying, okay, they're looking over there.
Doesn't really change anything, Pazza.
But what do you mean it doesn't? You're right, it doesn't change anything. None of this conversation does, because there's a whole load of people who think one way and some people who think another. The question is, who's got the best explanatory mechanism?
And it's not you guys.
I would say what the truth is what's important. I mean, explanations are cool, and they're good if they're accurate, and if you're explaining something that's true, it can be useful. But at the same time, explanations are kind of a dime a dozen, and there's a lot of different avenues that of limited usefulness at times they can have. Like the old thing, let's say there's a big gust of wind, and you could make up a whole explanation as to why that was invisible Superman that flew by that created the wind, and you could have calculations and physics for it. But obviously, it doesn't mean that it actually was Superman. It's kind of an extreme example. But I mean, explanations are good. But I guess even if someone had the most fantastic explanation, but it was false, then it's not that useful in terms of getting to the truth. So I'm just saying, what's important
for
is
the
what
longest
the
time.
truth is ultimately.
But for the longest time, Gio, the explanation for sunsets on a flat Earth was the sun is moving away from us so far that we can no longer see it anymore. So we're just wondering why this doesn't happen in Antarctica. Why doesn't the sun continue moving away from us and set?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me that directly, I mean, I just posted an image showing, it's because the celestial sphere is fully tilted just like it does in the north. Like if you take the celestial sphere on whatever model, whether it's globe or planar, whatever it is, that's stellarium itself. So this celestial sphere, essentially on either model, it tilts because this data is pulled from stellarium. So it like I was saying before, the axis of it And as you pull it south, just like it does in the north, the 24-hour sun is clearly geometrically, uh,
I don't know if you realize, but you can't
a
have a celestial sphere above a dome.
It's a result
It's
of the celestial sphere and the angle of it when you get closer to the pole, because the axis going to that south pole, and then the whole rotation of the sky. Because like when you're looking at the southern rotation of stars, the Tropic of Capricorn is on that wheel. And so there's stars on the Tropic of Capricorn. So when the sun gets there, just like the stars are rotating, it makes sense that the sun would as well. And when you get closest to the pole, you're able to see that whole rotation.
Well, that would also mean that the orientation of this dome, this celestial sphere, is constantly changing, because the 24-hour sun is only visible in Antarctica during the summer, the Antarctic summer. So it would mean that it would change its position in different times of the year.
Right.
Yeah, there's not
and
a
at the same
24-hour sun
time,
there. Yeah, there's not a 24-hour sun there all the time. Like as the sun starts getting closer, like from the Tropic of Capricorn to the equator, or as you start moving south, that whole celestial sphere, like, well, the sun will move down on that celestial sphere. Right now in that little screenshot, it's at the Tropic of Capricorn. But as the days start ticking past like the equinox, the sun will start going down to the equator. So yeah, that it would be lower on that celestial sphere. Therefore, it would not at some point would not get the 24-hour sun effect from that. And then as you would move further north, it would tilt the whole arc of that whole sun path, which also would make it. So yeah, it's only a phenomenon that can happen just like in the north, but it seems to mirror what it does in the north. So, and that's why I understand why it works on a globe model. That's fine, but the question is that the truth? If it's not, then explaining it that way is not useful. If it's not the truth.
And what exactly is the celestial sphere? Is it the dome? What exactly is it?
Well, there's kind of two ways. Well, there's a couple ways to describe that, because you have like your azimuthal grid, your azimuth, and your like hemispherical, grid, like on Stellarium, which is only the one part of the sky you can see. And then there's the actual like entire celestial sphere, like the entire sky. So like in the globe model, they take that whole thing and they put it out in outer space, and then we're on the sphere. And so that's like the entire field, which on a planar surface, if you're only taking azimuthal grids, you have to basically combine all of those to get the entire celestial sphere. But the way like it can be described in terms of the way it, like the celestial sphere, in terms of how it like tilts like this, just like in Bisland's model, because I also, I'm not going to really be on super long right now, so I'm not going to pull up the whole thing, but I was like animating it or going through it. But this one just shows the 24-hour sun in the north. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could occur, but the celestial sphere seems to be related to your position, in terms of your latitude, further north at the equator or south. And the sky seems to, like if it's a toroidal field, the sky does have spherical geometry, it has toroidal geometry. And so as you would move from north to south, you're at a different position of the two axes of the southern and northern rotation. It's like a massive sphere. It's like if you put a pole through the middle of a beach ball at the axis, kind of like the axis of the globe Earth, that would be like a tilting sphere. But basically, when you're in the north, you see the northern side of it. When you're at the equator, you see it 50-50. When you go south, you see the southern side. So like the celestial sphere, in terms of that part of it, is viewed, which is kind of on the globe Earth. That's what it is when you're in the northern hemisphere versus the southern. The northern, you see the northern, southern, obviously. But on a planar surface with a celestial sphere that is above and around you, that's like a hemisphere, then the equivalent of that is how it tilts for the north and the south in terms of the axes of the two rotations.
Yeah, that's how I sort of pictured it. I pictured it as being a hemisphere, not a complete sphere on a planar model.
What I will say though, Geo, is one of the good things about what's happened with this trip down there is it has, as it's clearly, over the past couple of days, it's opened up it's reignited a much broader conversation, which has been largely polite and very refreshing. I think, I think it's cool that we're all talking about this. That's the one thing that I take from this. It's maybe it takes things on a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's kind of been some interesting, not to derail onto this if we want to stay on where we're at, but there has been, I think, some interesting just shifts in the community in general. I actually feel like some people have come together in new ways that maybe hadn't happened before, and maybe there also is more opposition or more kind of opposition as well. But it also seems like there's like whenever there's concessions to a degree, that could change things, you know. So you never know. Maybe the next time it might be the Globe folks making a concession. So don't celebrate too early. It's not over yet.
I don't think there's not. It's not really. It's not really a celebration, is it? It's trying to flesh out what perspectives. That's really what we're doing. I mean,
Right. So we've been saying-
if a celebration is perceived by one side only, it's Pyrrhic, isn't it? It's not really useful.
Right, because we've been saying this the whole time. We've been saying that 24-hour sun, and it's position based. It's based on the position on the ground. The same way in the north, you're only going to see that, and it's based on the shape of the ground. That's why the sun circles in the north that the flat earthers ran with. And we say, well, we agree with that. That wasn't the argument. The argument has always been the south. Started with flight routes, shape of Antarctica. Why are you flying from Australia to Santiago and going over the north when that's not the flight route? So it's always been the south. Those lines of longitude do converge. So the entailment of the spherical Earth is yes, at 90 degrees south, the sun circles around you due to the shape of the Earth and the season. So that's an entailment, and it's just three things have been proven from the spherical, the heliocentric Earth model, and how you're going to get on a two-dimensional surface, people looking at the sun during the Antarctic summer, rotating counterclockwise. It's still going to rotate the same direction from them in the north. The sun's going to rotate the same exact way.
I mean, the sun doesn't actually move in the globe model. It's stationary. The reason that we see it as we do is because of the orientation of the Earth, the tilt.
Well, it's the tilt. Yeah, the tilt of the Earth, right?
How can the sun be stationary?
It's relative. It's just like you sitting at a stoplight, and the person take off, and you don't notice, and you think you're drifting backwards. How do you tell if you're moving or not?
What?
It's relative.
Well, it
It's
is
relative.
in motion. I mean, in the heliocentric model, the sun is in motion, but yeah, I guess in relative to the Earth, like the Earth is moving around it, I suppose. But then when you get into relativity, you can kind of swap it either way. But I mean, you know, you guys have all seen that with the corkscrewing, the sun blasting through space with all the planets corkscrewing around it. We've all
Half a
seen
million miles
Yeah,
an
nice
hour.
cartoon.
Yeah,
Well, I remember
half a
when
million
that
miles
first
an
came out. When that first came out, it was like you've been lied to about what the solar system is, and it's like, and it shows like the stationary, like you know what we used to see with the sun in the middle and it's all the planets going around. And it was like, but you
Yeah.
know, and I was like, oh, they're saying that we've been lied to. What are they going to say? And then they're like, this is actually it. And then they show the sun, the ball sun, barreling through space with all the planets going around it. That's like the updated one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, when it comes to the shape, size, and motion of the Earth, we don't have to consider anything outside the solar system.
Fair enough. Well, except with dark
But
matter, but with the movement of things and gravity. But yeah, I guess not like locally as much though.
I think we can stick with Newtonian for all of this. We didn't even, delve into, equivalence principles, relativities. No, this is very, very mechanical, very tangible.
is it?
Yes, it is.
What's the mechanism?
Which
Oh,
mech?
dear.
Which
The
mechanism?
unseen forces that move the heavens. What's the mechanism?
I didn't say
If
the
it's a
heavens
Newtonian
move.
mechanical universe, what are the mechanisms?
Yeah, the Newtonian, the rotation of the Earth continues to rotate by inertia, and it orbits the sun by inertia and gravitation. Yeah, there you go.
So what got it started?
Don't care.
So you don't have any mechanisms or causes?
No, I just don't care how it started. You can deal with the
Well,
present.
it's pretty important.
Not
Pretty
really,
important.
not to describe what it is doing now.
Really.
Really.
Hmm. It's like discovering a machine, a fully functioning machine, and then trying to reverse engineer it, having no idea how the machine was conceived.
However, if we discover a fully functioning machine and we study and examine it and see what the machine does, how it reacts, and how to utilize it, I don't really care if it was made by Chevy or Ford.
See you later, guys. I've got to go to bed.
Take care, Jim.
Thanks for the chat.
Good on you for coming out, mate.